Howdy, and welcome to Communiwhat Wednesday, where we take communication and we break it down and we walk through and fix things in communication. Every day we have to talk to people. Every day we have messaging that we receive and that we give, and every day it works and it doesn't. Why does it work sometimes? Why does it not work others? That's what we talk about on What Wednesday. Yeah, I almost said communication, but that's the goal, is effective communication. So I want to start today. If you haven't been following along, this is only the second one we've done. This is Communiwhat. This is where it all started in 2010. I wrote communication on my whiteboard. I was a brand new supervisor and I scratched out cation and wrote what because that's what was happening. What? There really was no communication happening. And within that, we know that connection creates clarity and clarity drives results. Well, how do we get there? Communication. There's a 5 tiers here. The Communiwhat framework, 5 steps. Number 1, intent. We talked about that last week. Number 2, today, context. What is it that the individual needs to understand correctly? What do they need to understand what you're saying correctly? Next week, we'll talk about clarity. Today is context. And why is context important? Well, communication, most of the time, a breakdown doesn't occur because someone doesn't care or aren't listening. It fails because there's a lack of context around why. So we know in number 1, we talk about intent. Why am I having this conversation? I have some information, I have a directive, I have a reason I need to express this. Be clear about the reason and your intent. Number 2, context. What do they need to understand this correctly? Is there more information that needs to be provided so that they can understand what the message truly is? So, in talking about intent, we talk about why are you saying what you're saying. And today, we're talking about context. So, most communications breakdown don't come from an ill intent. We do know people that run as soon as they have a juicy piece of gossip and they have to share it. And that is not communication conducive to growth. But most communication that fails, there is a lack of context. Can you hand me the butter? Well, if we're sitting at the dinner table, that makes sense. Can you hand me the butter and you're in the kitchen cooking? That makes sense. Can you hand me the butter when you're in the grocery store? That makes sense. But if I'm in my office and someone says, "Can you hand me the butter?" What's happening? Dana, you're really confusing me. Yeah, I'm really confused too. Because we're talking about butter at work. Why are we talking about butter at work? What is the context of butter at work? Now, someone just jumping in and hearing butter at work, I hope that doesn't become a thing. There's information missing. There's context missing. So, in order for me to know exactly what you mean coming at me at work asking to hand you the butter, I need to understand a lot more than just the question. I know pressure. I know timelines. I know expectations of me. But if you come at me with a directive and you give me no sense of pressure, no sense of timeline, no real sense of expectations, you're lacking context. I'm lacking context. All I'm hearing is words. That's it. And when we get frustrated and we're not responding, people aren't responding in the way you need them to, and it's because they're missing context. Let's think about this. Well, let's tell a story this way. Your boss walks in. I need you to prioritize this. That seems pretty clear, right? But what does that actually mean? Does like priority compared to what? Am I supposed to stop what I'm doing and work on this? Do I need to just move it up the list that I already have of priorities? Is this a priority because of the person that this is for, or the client that this is for? When really is there's so many questions around context. How many of us as people leaders have done this where we've walked in? "So this is urgent. I know you've been working on this, but I need you to prioritize it." All right, gotcha. And you walk out, they do it, but it takes a day or two. And now you're upset because you needed it before the end of the business day. But did you explain that? Did you give that context, timeline? See, in your mind, providing that information of just, hey, I need to prioritize this, creates more questions. And those questions, I mean, in your mind, it's obvious, right? But in their mind, it's a guessing game. And now we have two people working really hard at missing each other. Context answers kind of one simple question: what does the other person need to understand this correctly? What do I need to give to make sure that they're receiving the message? And that's it. It's not what you know, and it's not what you assume. It's what do they need? Because without context, then any feedback, it feels personal. You get defensive. Any change that's occurring, it feels very random, and decisions are feeling disconnected from the bigger vision. People in general will not risk or resist any change just because it's change. What they resist is confusion. Nobody likes that type of angst that is created with the unknown. And in this case, and in this situation where we have a boss just simply, I need you to prioritize this, that employee may be exploding inside with angst because they don't have the timeline. They don't know who it's for. They really aren't clear, maybe, on the instruction or the directive. So, what does this kind of look like? How do we do this in real life? Well, we start with saying, we need to make this change. No, that's what we already say. We need to make this change, to we are making this change because client expectations have shifted. And if we don't adjust, we're going to fall behind. What you just did in that statement was answer the question of why are we making the change? We answer the question of what happens if we don't change. Whereas the very first question that you ask is or the very first statement, we need to make this change, doesn't do any of that. It's the same exact message though. We have to do this, but there's a completely different impact from the message receiver. One of those ways creates resistance, and the other one creates understanding. So this right here is where most of us leaders get it wrong from time to time. We assume that context, or providing another 15 to 20 seconds of information, will slow things down. But it doesn't. It actually speeds things up, because now your team, your people are not guessing. They're not angsty. They're aligning. And once you have all of that sort of alignment, execution, immediate execution. So the question really is for you to think about today. Where are you assuming that people know more than they actually do? That's not a dig on an employee's intelligence level or level of skill, tribal knowledge, those things. No, no, no. Where are you assuming that people know more than they actually do within your conversations or directives? Where are you maybe skipping some context because to you it feels obvious? That's the biggest thing. When we try to communicate something, we have built up assumptions. Now, we can take this a step further. We've built up the assumptions, and those assumptions are you already know the context. But if that person doesn't know the context, if you really want that communication to land, if they don't know the context, it never will. So you can't just say, this is what needs to happen. You need to let someone understand why it matters because the communication's not really what you're just saying, it's what is understood. I gave my wife a vacuum cleaner for Christmas one year. When people found out that was the gift, they were appalled that the husband bought a vacuum cleaner for his wife for Christmas. However, they did not have context. Context was we had a pet. Context was this was an expensive vacuum. Context was my wife had asked for this several times. Context was she was elated to get this vacuum. I actually used it more. That's another story. But the point is, if you don't have context, something that is wonderful and productive and amazing through a lens with no context has none of that shine. When people understand the context of that gift and what it meant, their entire tune changes. Why? Because now they're aligned. Yeah, I just used a vacuum cleaner story to talk about communication because it is the same thing. It's information being transmitted and received. And when those things are aligned, we get results. Now we all share in the laughter and the joy of the vacuum cleaner Christmas story. When you can align context, spend the extra time. When this happens, then that communication and that connectivity compounds. Communicate with attention, create alignment, and drive results. Next week, we're going to talk about clarity, but we're going to talk about context. We're going to hang out. What the structure of these will be moving forward is kind of we'll open up like we just did for about 5-10 minutes and talk through what the main topic is for today, and in this case, context. And then it's open. I mean, if anyone wants to jump in and chat, um, I am. Oh, we've got chat turned off. Well, then this is going to be a short one today because there will be no one chatting. Um, we'll get the chat turned back on. I do want to quickly promote my Be the Example newsletter. Um, every week, you will receive a newsletter that takes, I say, 1 minute to read. I kind of read fast, skim fast. Couple minutes that contains a quote for the week and a topic. And right now we're walking through what we're talking about in the Communiwhat framework. Well, we just completed that. And this week we talked about being a high road leader. John Maxwell has a book called High Road Leaders, and I have a couple of copies of it. I have not read it yet, but there was a quote from that book. I have not read it. I have not completed it yet. There was a quote from that book that I used in the newsletter this week, and we talked about being a high road leader and why that's important. So go check out the Be the Example newsletter. The QR code is right there. You can sign up. We'll try to remember to put the link at the bottom. But that is Communiwhat for me, though. There we go. There we go. Let's do that. That looks fun. We're in the corner. Let's do the corner. Yeah. Communication has always been something of an issue for me. No, something I've been passionate about. I think I need to understand, right? So even my employees will tell you, my family will tell you, I talk a lot, and it's not talking to hear myself talk. Although right now that's what's happening. Um, Inquisitive. When I ask, why would you do X? When I ask my wife why she would do X, number one, that's probably not the proper way to approach that in a relationship of any sorts. Is why would you do that? No, but I do have to know. For instance, let's see. Oh, processes, process building in the workplace. As you climb your leadership ladder, and that's the law of the lid too. That's a great book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. Law of the lid. As you're evaluating that and you realize your leadership can no longer grow in your current position or situation, that means that your boss maybe is limited and not growing. If that boss is not growing, then you are limited. There's a lid on your growth. You can only grow as tall and as fast and as big and as wonderful as the person responsible for your growth is allowing. So control what you can control in that. But if you find yourself in a situation, the law of the lid, and maybe that's you, maybe you stumbled upon this and are hearing you need to grow. Everyone needs to grow. Every leader needs to be growing constantly. If you're not constantly trying to be a better leader than you were yesterday, what are you doing? And what are you teaching? And are you a leader? That seems a little accusatory, Dana. Well, I'm passionate about it, but I've always been passionate about communication. When I ask, why is the dishwasher loaded this way? It's not an attack. It's not a whatever. It really truly is like, maybe there's a better way to do this that I don't know. That can be a bit taxing when you turn everything back around on yourself. How can I do it better? How can I communicate better? How can I load the dishwasher better to get a cleaner dish? What have you? Constant. And communication is one of those that is a consistent challenge, an opportunity at every turn to connect with someone. Right now, we're in the middle of the World Cup. And the World Cup, Mexico to US, there's games being played everywhere. And so one of the interesting phenomenons that's happening right now, this is 2026, June. And what is today actually? The 17th, June 17th, 2026. The phenomenon of people learning for themselves what this country of America really is. Many of these videos are people from other countries talking about how they were warned about security and warned how dangerous our country of the United States is, and that there are federal representatives pushing people out as they come in. Don't know where all that news source. Those were literal things I heard these people say, and that there was concern that they had getting off the plane. When they got the real America, when they opened up the context of who the people are in America, their tune was immediately changed. It's smiles, it's laughter, it's Americans and Scots, it's Americans and whoever else. Like, we're all just together. And the Japanese guy in Dallas, after watching the Japanese game, was so, it almost brought me to tears. He was so excited to be in America and see things for himself, to get that context himself. And while he could not speak very good English, he even apologized. My English is not good, but I am excited. When I heard this guy, I was almost to tears. It was so encouraging. Encouraging because it's a young person experiencing on their own context and not being told what the context is. When we translate this to leadership and work, and what I mean by work, the work on yourself, the work you have to do for you. Sometimes we have to take that first layer of the message and break it down ourselves. The guesswork that makes us angsty, that can create the follow-up question to get you the information that you need. When we use this example of this Japanese man losing his mind with excitement, he got the context he needed to do what he needed to do and have a good time. When I provide the directive of go and do this project by this date, and we need it done in this way because this is the expectation from the client. When I say that, I'm excited. Maybe I can't speak English well, but I'm excited. Well, no, I learned to speak English better. And that makes me more excited. I learned to speak English. I learned to communicate better. Even without words, that individual was able to communicate very easily how he was feeling. It's not so easy in the workplace to communicate how you're feeling because you're navigating a lot. You're navigating sometimes politics, office politics. You're navigating someone that you saw come through and you know they're having a bad day. You're navigating for the other job I have. I have meetings at 9 p.m. with Singapore. So now you're talking about not just cultural, but language barrier. Not language barrier as in we don't both speak English, but things mean things differently in different languages and how those things are presented. And so you have to move beyond that. And so especially where there are challenges like language, distance, technology. I did that on purpose to show you it's me. All of those things create a more clear communication through context. So I will sort out our comments because I would love to chat with you all. But today that's not functioning. I don't have anything else for today, but I do hope that you all tune in next week to Communiwhat podcast, and we will go over number 3, clarity. And if you have been listening to the 1 Minute Wins podcast, those are pre-recorded and they go along with the 1 Minute Wins book. If you've been listening to those, there's a piece I say in there often, and it's clarity is kindness. And that is true. Context is important. Intent is necessary, but clarity is kindness. And we'll talk about that next week. Always remember, be the example.